Hello and welcome to second episode of Gully Cricket to Bouncy Wicket podcast. I have with me Raja and Manoj. So guys, how has your week been?
Hi Manoj, hi Sinu. It was a good week, and it's a good thing that it seems like the world is getting back to some kind of normalcy. Starting with the fact that we have live cricket in India, the international cricket back within our shores. So that's a great thing. How about you, Manoj?
Hi Raja. Before telling you how my week has been, I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for the response that we've got, and hopefully we'll keep getting better from here on. Yeah, coming to me, my week has been pretty busy with all the work and stuff, but yeah, really delighted that getting live cricket here in India. Sinu, how has your week been?
Yeah, I had a pretty busy week. At least at the first half of the week, I was very busy with the office work, and I even could not edit our first episode. We recorded on Sunday probably or Saturday, and then we could release episode only on Thursday night, right? So yeah, it's been a pretty busy week for me, and yeah, coming towards the second half of the week, it has become quite normal, and with the test match between India and England being started, yeah, it was fairly okay week. So let's dive into this week episode content. We'll start with Syed Mustafa Ali Trophy finals, which happened last Sunday between Tamil Nadu and Baroda, and I should say teams haven't lost a single game till the final. And for Tamil Nadu, at one stage, Jagdishan was a star of the team, and Shahrukh Khan played some good innings, and Arun Karthik played some beautiful innings, and Dinesh Karthik played some innings. And similarly for Baroda, it's not easy for them to lose captain in the beginning of the tournament. I think after three matches, their captain Krunal Pandya has to leave the team because of the demise of his father. It's not an easy thing for a team to pick up from that stage and come to final without losing a match. And if you know, Deepak Huda has left the team before the start of the tournament itself because of some fight with captain Krunal Pandya. So yeah, both the teams has done really good job coming to the finals, and yeah, finals almost went like a one-sided match with Tamil Nadu dominating right from the word go. So I think Raja has followed quite a bit of SM80. So Raja, what are your thoughts on SM80?
Yeah, so the Syed Mushtaq Ali, given a bit of a context, it's for the domestic T20 tournament. In fact, this is the first instance of domestic cricket happening in the country for this particular season. It usually kicks off with the Ranji Trophy, but due to the pandemic, it has been cancelled this year. So for aspiring cricketers, for aspiring national level players, and even in fact for established domestic cricketers, this was the first opportunity for them to play in a full year. And seeing that, I think we have to congratulate BCCI also, because it is a 38 team event, and it's also split into pools, and each team is playing each other team. So it's quite an extensive tournament, and they've handled it pretty well. We're saying that your usual suspects of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, even stronger teams like Baroda, they've done very well this year. But it was a bit surprising that Mumbai, which is considered to be the batting school of Indian cricket, didn't do that well, where they didn't qualify for the knockouts itself. A lot of ups and downs were happening, but ultimately I think the two best teams of Tamil Nadu and Baroda had reached the finals. And and it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, Raja, like you mentioned, it's not an easy thing to conduct such a big tournament with 38 teams, considering COVID situation. We have to definitely shout out to BCCI here. And and coming back to finals, the way it has panned out was amazing, man. And one thing that we have to make a note of finals is all the knockout games of the tournament were conducted in the same stadium, which is a new stadium in Ahmedabad. And one point to note here is the same stadium is going to host last two matches of India and England Test series, right? When it came to finals, the pitch was very slow. I don't know how
Absolutely,
it is going to how it is going to pan out for the third and fourth test, or fourth day or fifth day of the test match. It was very slow and very spinner assistive pitch. And I think Tamil Nadu read that very well, and they went on with four spinners on a T20 and such a big, tournament finals. They went on with four spinners. And I was seeing the match, I thought power play will be bowled by spinners. And Yeah, it went on to 6th, 7th, 8th. I think 12th over or 13th over, if I'm not wrong. Fast bowlers started bowling
Correct.
taking
Your
the bowling.
Sunu Yadav and I think Mohammed. Correct.
Right. Until then, spinners were bowling, and they took the wickets also. Like every over or at very regular intervals, the spinners got the wickets, and I don't think Dinesh Karthik had a big thinking to do there. At one stage, even Baroda were like 36 for 6. It went very, very much as per plan for Tamil Nadu. So, what were your thoughts on that, Raja?
Yeah. So again, we have to give credit to the your Tamil Nadu, like the coaching staff as well as Dinesh Karthik for picking the right people and identifying that it was going to turn and the use of spinners was going to be the key. And as you mentioned, the issues with the Baroda team and all that, I have to mention that Kedar Devdhar, who's the captain of Baroda, I think he did a great job in getting the team this far. Krunal Pandey was actually the captain for Baroda, and then as you said, he had to leave. And considering all the drama, I think they did a very good job in getting the team to the finals. Having said that, it was a great display of spin bowling performance by Tamil Nadu, and it took a good partnership between Vikram Solanki and Vishnu Solanki and I think Atit Sheth. Both of them stuck together to just get the team to a respectable score. Yeah. And when it came to the chase, I thought it was very straightforward. There was not too many hiccups and not too much of a trouble for the Tamil Nadu team in just chasing that score of 122 down.
Yeah, definitely. When you see 120 on the board, definitely irrespective of the pitch, it will give an ease for the chasing team, right? Only 120, there is no need to hurry, or there will be no pressure on the batsman, right?
Correct.
Speaking of Vishnu Solanki, I think we should say that he anchored the inning right from 36 for 6, and he is the sole reason for the team to reach 120, which is at least a respectable total in the finals. And if you remember, he is the one who got them to finals in the first place. Semi-finals, I think they have to get some 14 runs of the last 3 balls, 14 or 16 runs.
You're right. Yeah. I think
and then he hit 6, 4 and a 6 for the last 3 balls, and the last 6 he hit a helicopter shot. So it was it was really nice that they crossed the line. But finals has not panned out as their plan probably, and we have to give enough credit to Dinesh Karthik also here. Dinesh Karthik was captaining Tamil Nadu team for quite long time. In fact, they won last time they won SM80 was in 2006-7 season, and Dinesh Karthik was captain then also.
Correct.
And under same captaincy, the team has won tournament after 13 years of gap. Yeah, we know Dinesh Karthik right from beginning of his career was a great prospect, and he was captain from there. So what are your thoughts on SM80, Manoj?
Hey, hi Sinu. So this, like Raja said, this was the first big tournament in India after the pandemic, and I was pretty happy how it unfolded, and also happy with the winner of this tournament. I think Tamil Nadu, we have a new winner this year. I think the last was won by Karnataka, if I'm not wrong. So I think really congratulations to Tamil Nadu. The way they played this whole tournament, I think they didn't even lose a single game. So yeah, kudos to them. And like you said, winning the trophy again after 13 years under the same captain, pretty amazing.
And last year was quite interesting final. I think Tamil Nadu lost by 1 run against Karnataka. Last year final.
Actually pretty disappointed.
Correct.
Pretty disappointed not to see Karnataka winning this, because they are pretty strong team, and every time they come with a strong team to the tournament.
One more mention for Tamil Nadu here is their big guns were playing for India, right? There is no Washington Sundar, there is no Ashwin, even Natarajan is a very good T20 player. All 3 of them were in Australia playing for
also,
India.
Vijay Shankar wasn't available for the tournament as also.
I think in the knockoff, I think he was available.
No, he was not available. He didn't, maybe 1 or 2 games, but after that, he was not available.
For his marriage, I think. He got married.
I think Tamil Nadu had 2 international players, right? Dinesh Karthik and Murugan Ashwin. I think they were the only 2 international, and the rest of the team was, not so experienced, but still they went on to win the tournament.
I think Shah Rukh Khan, we have to mention him. He's a great all-rounder. He's turning out to be, and I'm sure in IPL he will have a good demand this time in the auction.
I think he is going to be one that the scouts will be already eyeing, because he's not. He comes down 4 or 5 down for Tamil Nadu, and I remember a game where he finished. I think it was in the semi-finals. I think him and Baba Aparajit were there to the end, getting off to some kind of rocky start. They stabilized it, and he was there at the end to finish that game before nerves could creep in. So I think think this guy is like a very good finisher, considering his position, and this is a specialist position that a lot of teams will be interested in.
Yeah, and he can bowl also, and he's quite a good prospect. And consistency was one problem with him for the last few years, I think. But this year, definitely he is going to get good IPL team.
Hopefully, I think that's another important thing that we need to talk about when it comes to Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy in itself, and also for in terms of its context, in terms of the IPL. So usually your Syed Mushtaq Alis are like auditions, you can say, for IPL auctions, because they are usually scheduled in a window where after which the auction is held. So even the last year's big good players such as Sai Kishore and guys like
And Jagadish, I guess, right?
yeah, Jagadish and even guys like Ruturaj Gaikwad, Devdutt Padikkal was actually one of the highest run getters of the Syed Mushtaq Ali tournament last year. And seeing his performance, I think the auction was held within a few weeks after the tournament ended, and he was picked up by RCB at his base price again. So these guys, I think, and the scouts and the teams are watching this tournament pretty closely, because this is where the future stars come out from.
True. I think if you look at Tamil Nadu team, if I'm not wrong, Baba Parajit was part of the 2012 under-19 team, I believe, which won under the leadership of Unmukh Chand. One interesting thing is Hanuma Vihari also was part of that squad. Yeah, like you said, I mean, this is a great platform for the players to show their skills, and like you said, the teams are watching out for star players in these tournaments.
Because it's essentially a very high-pressure tournament within a very short span of time, that there is not a lot of turnaround. This is actually a great thing to check people handling pressure, your game situations, match temperaments, and even physically how they're able to quickly turn around. So ideally, it's the ideal platform for young players to showcase their talent and to make a mark.
If I am not wrong, I think last year they conducted for the women's also similar tournament, and Shifali Verma, if you know, like she was one of the top scorers last year, and she got selected to India women's team for the World Cup, and she was opening for India from the domestic tournament. She got selected.
So so before we move on to the next point of our discussion, I just want to tell our listeners who the tournament is named after. So it's the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy, and Syed Mushtaq Ali was in fact the first batsman from India to score an overseas test 100 in England in 1932, if I'm not wrong. So he played under C.K. Naidu and all that, and it's a great homage. So and he's only scored 2 international hundreds. He played like 10 or 11 tests, and during that time the frequency of cricket was not that much. But it's a great thing for BCCI to honor a legend of Indian cricket by giving the fastest and the shortest format his name.
Yeah, great point. Coming to names of these tournaments, India play like first class cricket as Ranji Trophy, right? And then 50 overs cricket as Vijay Hazare. And why do BCCI doesn't change these names over years? I think Ranji Trophy is being played from 1930s, 40s with the same name.
Yeah,
we had many 50 over legends who have come after that. What do you think of renaming Ranji Trophy? What is your opinion on that?
No. So Maharaja Ranjit Singh, after whom the Ranji Trophy is named, was supposed to be the best batsman of his time, not just in Indian cricket. He also went and played a lot of cricket for cricket in England. So he widely regarded as one of the best players to have played across this league.
I think he played in early 1900s also, right? 1903, something like that. There is no doubt on his achievements. What I'm saying is we have many legends who have come after him. Like now, probably 80 years or so, we have called the tournament as Ranji Trophy. So why not? Manoj, what do you think? What do you think about it?
I'm completely against that. I think, like Raja said, there's a reason why they name these trophies with these great players. I think I think they should stick with the current names. Even a lot of overseas players, they know these tournaments, and renaming these. I mean, I'm not really for this.
So Ranjit Singh ji, who's the Ranji Trophy has been named. He is actually the first person from India to play for England, because India didn't have that an international team at that time. It was I am just looking up at this thing. It's a fascinating story actually for someone to be raised and born and okay, obviously a royal family and all that, but to be of such a great standard that he's representing England. A great story. Maybe we can have a.
He's having Jadeja in his name. So now you understand why Jadeja, do that sword moment after finishing 50. Probably a tribute to him.
Even the former Ajay Jadeja, I think he's related to them in some form.
Oh.
I think so. But I think
He also is from royal family, I believe. Ajay Jadeja.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah, so let's move on to India versus England, which is going to be very crucial for India's place in the WTC finals, right? This Australia has, if you can say, messed up in between. Probably earlier it was like Australia's outcome of the South Africa series had some bearing on WTC finals. Now that Australia has pulled out of the series, now the whole world is looking at India versus England series on who will reach finals. Basically, I think, if I look at the chances of India reaching WTC finals, India had to play really well in this series. Either they have to win 4-0, 3-0, 3-1, 2-0, or 2-1, I guess. Only these 4 or 5 combinations has to come out as result of India versus England series. Only then India will be able to reach WTC final. What is your view on this one?
Yeah, I think Australia pulling out for obvious reasons, because now there are a lot of cases, corona cases back in Australia. They had their reasons to pull out of this, so that puts India in sort of tough situation where they have to win this series if they have to be in the World Test Championship.
And coming back to India's selection for the England Test series, they have to take Ishant Sharma, right? There is no other option. He is such a legend in the current generation. I think he played close to 100 matches, right? He played something like 97 or 98. His first match with England is going to be 98 or something, and he's back from injury. And unfortunately, Saini and Siraj has to lose their place in the playing 11 because we can't leave Bumrah.
True.
Even Shardul, we have to feel for them after their heroics in Australia, not playing that very next test India is playing is like you have to feel for them. And even we have to mention Akshar Patel. I think he got injured the day before test match or something, and then he would have been perfect replacement for Jadeja in all departments, right? He can bowl, he's a good fielder, and he can bat. And India will miss Shami as well. Shami, if you ask me, is our 4th innings bowler, right? In every series, whenever India plays in India, Shami is the 4th innings god, I would say. What do you guys think about selection for the first test?
Yeah, so what I was saying is a lot of people expected Akshar Patel to be picked, but unfortunately he missed out an injury. Yeah, that's been the case, right? If a player has done well in the previous series, even though if a senior player is coming back, then he will lose his place. That's what happened here. I think with Shami missing out, we only have Ishant now, right, as the senior player. So I think overall, we in the best 11.
I think we got to feel for Kuldeep Yadav also here. He was with the team for complete series in Australia, and
true.
Coming back to India again, I think Shahbaz Nadeem pick was surprising for me. I don't know why or what is the reason for Kuldeep not being picked in the playing 11.
Good call. Nadeem, I think when he made his debut in India, I think he did well for himself. I think he picked up 4 wickets or something like that in an innings. And then I think he played a good supporting role to Ashwin, not wrong. But the thing is that I think they wanted a left arm spinner with some kind of a domestic pedigree, because that could be the only reason he could have been picked over someone like Kuldeep, who hadn't played a lot in a while.
Yeah, I think whatever may be reason, I think Kuldeep got a feel for it, right? I think coming back to England's team, I think they got Jofra Archer and
Okay.
coming to England selection for the first match, they got Jofra Archer and Ben Stokes flying from England to India directly. They were not part of the tournament with Sri Lanka. And yeah, maybe it's a disappointment or a negative point for India. England coming from Sri Lanka series is a big boost for them, and their batsmen would have got good experience of spin bowling before starting, India series. And Joe Root, he is already a very good player of spin bowling, and he got big scores in Sri Lanka, 200 and 180, and yeah, his conversion rate of late has also got improved from 50s, right? Earlier he used to get out at 70s, 80s. Now he's converting more. Yeah, Joe Root, you can say he's becoming more and more comparable to the Fab Four, like, or giving more competition to Smith, Kohli and Kane Williamson with the improvement in his batting, especially in subcontinent, right? And James Anderson, man, no, I don't have enough words for him. I don't know how long he's going to play, and for sure he's going to cross Anil Kumble, right? I think
Absolutely.
he's at 606 wickets and Anil Kumble is at 619. And fast bowler
Yes.
taking 600 wickets, maybe, unbelievable. What do you say about Jimmy Anderson, Manoj?
Yes, Jimmy Anderson has been a great bowler for England over the years. Be it home soil or away, he's been the most reliable bowler. I think give him the ball and every time he gets you a wicket. So the fact that he's been able to play the series is a great thing, and I'm sure he will outclass even the great Anil in the years to come.
And a point to that, things with say bowling partnerships, right? We talk about your Wasim and Waqar together, or in the 90s, or even the great Australian pace bowling attacks of the 90s or 2000s, or even the partnership between Broad and Anderson, right? They're right up there. I think once they decide to hang up their boots and perspective, they'll land one of the greatest partnerships in terms of bowling of all time. Just the fact of sheer numbers, right? I think I have a stat up here which says that Anderson and Broad have together around 1100 plus wickets between the two of them, and it's just mind-boggling. Like, which we were talking in the last episode of how 4 different bowlers for Australia had more than 1,000 wickets together, and to have just the two of them, and the two of them, even irrespective of age or illness or fitness issues, they're still going strong. And to have that England's arsenal, it's such a great great advantage that they have. And it's, as you said, it's really unfortunate that they can't play the two of them. Even in Sri Lanka, if I'm not wrong, Broad played the first test, and then he was rested for the second, and Anderson played the second test. So it's just I think once history will remember them or see them as true greats of cricket.
Yeah, that's such a great thing. 2 fast bowlers having 1100 plus wickets between them is an amazing thing. Having 2 spinners like that, fine. 1 fast bowler, 1 spinner is also understandable. But 2 fast bowlers, I think they are going to leave a big void in England team whenever they are retiring. And yeah, hopefully Anderson takes many more wickets before he retires.
And but to just to the fact of longevity, right? Jimmy Anderson is 38 years old and he's playing his 159th test match today. Amazing.
Great longevity. I think hats off to his longevity.
I think even Stuart Broad has come a long way, right? From 6 sixes to 500 wickets today.
Absolute amazing duo, and great just the athletes, could just say. And to come to England's selection also for the first 2 tests, I think they've announced the team. One glaring thing was that the absence of Johnny Bairstow, right? Johnny Bairstow played exceptionally well in countering the spin, apart from Joe Root, who we will talk about during the rest of the episode. But Johnny Bairstow is also missing out. That also is a bit of a disdain. But again, England, I don't know, it just has the depth of test reserves that are exceptional. I think whether it is due to their emphasis on the longer formats of cricket, or just the strength of their county game, whoever is coming through the ranks for England in whites especially is of a different level. I feel just the fact that they were able to dominate Sri Lanka in Sri Lanka, it was a great thing to see.
Yeah, and diving into the first match of India versus England. So we are on day 3 when we are recording basically. So yeah, England won the toss. I think it's very good toss to win in a subcontinental pitch, right? So they won the toss and they choose batting rightly so, and they put mountain of runs in front of India. So what do you think of England's first innings, Manoj?
I think it's a great toss to win. I think India were also thinking of batting if they had won the toss. loss. Yeah, I think we are credit to the way Root has played in the first innings, coming on the back of a great Sri Lanka series, has obviously helped them to adapt, acclimatize, or whatever you want to call it. So he kept batting and batting. You could see how confident he was in the way he played, the technique. Was perfect for these conditions. Yeah, kudos to Root for the way he played. Even if you look at some of the other younger players who rose to the occasion, they have really played well. For example, like I was saying, Sibley also played exceptionally well for his first match in India. After coming from Sri Lanka, he really showed his skills. If you look at, he scored, I think, around 87. Also, Stokes coming into this series, he was a bit, tentative in the beginning, but yeah, as innings progressed, he also got better and scored 82. Overall, a great batting performance, I can call it that.
And another point to add here is that they kept Indian bowlers on the Indian team on the field for 190 overs. That's a massive amount of energy spent on the field. This will play a role in whenever India has to bowl in the second innings.
I think we have to mention one more point on Joe Root here. He became the first batsman to score double century on 100th test, which is a great achievement. Getting 100 on 100th test itself is a elite list, and then he got double 100 and he became highest scorer on the list, 218. Previous record was held by Inzamam ul Haq, 184. And one more point to add, Ricky Ponting got centuries in both the innings of his 100th test. That's one more notable point.
Yeah, I think Root will go down as one of the great players who played the game, I think, for England especially.
He played, I think, to a large extent, I think he played spin better than even maybe a few Indian players I've seen. So this is the use of his feet. He was getting behind the ball, defending wherever, and he didn't spare anyone if he was bowling even a bit loose. Like, I think the entire team took a bit of after they went after, say, Shahbaz Nadeem and Washington Sundar T hard when they were erring in line or when they were not up to standards. They paid the price, and it was very surprising a bit to see their ease in which they were playing spin. It's not just Root, even Sibley or even Ben Stokes, great innings. And even a word to Dom Bess coming in at number 8, right? Number 8 and staying, frustrating the hell out of the Indian bowlers, sticking around 100 plus balls and just playing with good amount of confidence and class. A great team performance.
Okay. And guys, what do you think about the wicket that Chennai has prepared for this test? Remember, we have to play another test here before moving on. And what do you think?
Yeah,
I mean, it's too flat for my liking.
Very flat. Yeah. I thought it was very flat as well. By the time we were recording this, I just saw a few overs bowled at the start by Anderson and Archer. I didn't notice any swing or any seam movement or anything at all. And
absolutely nothing for the bowlers.
Considering it's day 3, it's just there's a new hard ball and no help at all for the bowlers.
I think one point we have to mention here is India clearly failed to make use of that, right? The flat pitch on day 3 especially. They would have got really, good score against England, and here they are down with 6 wickets. Definitely. So what do you think about dismissal starting from Rohit?
Rohit Sharma, I don't know, man. It was a sharp bouncer, no doubt. But the fact is, it wasn't something. There was no movement of the play. It was just good, sharp, pacey ball, which was lifting a little bit, and he just fended at it to edge it to Butler. But I know that who would be most disappointed with this would be Shubman Gill also. Like Shubman Gill again.
Definitely one got to feel for it. He was in great touch. He was in great touch from the word go, and he got 5 fours beautifully. Like, it was so pleasing to see him play, man. Manoj, what do you think about Gill?
Gill, exceptional. I mean, the way he started off, I think he would be pretty disappointed. Like, should have, I think, played a little straighter, or maybe, I'm not sure, close to the pad. Maybe if you look at this dismissal, is a bat sort of swayed away, and then that could be one reason why it went into the air. And great catch though. But yeah, Gill obviously pretty good innings. Short innings.
Speaking of good catches, I think England had been point with their fielding, whatever little Indian innings has been. India, on the other hand, I felt they were a little bit sloppy in late catches or even some basic filler. And a huge another point I think we missed out. India bowled over 20 no balls, right?
That's very surprising actually. They were bowling,
including Ashwin bowling his first no ball in his career apparently today in Test cricket.
Too, he's bowling no balls in his home ground.
Correct. Shahbaz Nadeem bowled 6 no balls. I think even Bumrah was 5 or 6 no balls. Very strange to see.
Talking about Bumrah, I think one interesting stat is he had to wait 17 games to play in India. That's a lot of games outside India, right? Made in match.
Right.
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
in between he has become senior member of the test team. He handed over test cap to Navdeep Saini also as a senior member of the team, and then here he is playing his first match in India.
But it will be very challenging for India to do well. It will be a good achievement if they were able to compete and at least will be able to save this match. What do you guys think? I mean, is it too premature to say this?
I think they'll have to work hard to save this match, seeing where India is positioned now, losing 6 wickets for 242 for 6 to be precise, the current score. So yeah, I only expect India not to lose this. Manoj, what do you think?
Yeah, I think with 6 wickets down, I'm not sure how long will Ashwin hang around. Sundar, of course, has been batting well. I mean, if you look at after Ashwin, there are only bowlers left. Nadeem, I'm not sure how good he can bat. When the follow-on, I mean, what's the score if we have to avoid the follow-on?
378.
378.
We were 100.
Yeah, I think the first milestone would be to avoid follow-on, and then to see if where we can go from there.
But again, I have a feeling even if we falter before that, I don't think England will enforce a follow-on. I'm sure
yeah.
they would want to pile on the misery. They would want the Indian bowlers more depleted, more on the field and spread, spent, and Indian team as well. Just pile on quick runs and maybe see how give a good fighting.
Yeah, definitely. Let's hope India will not lose this test and ensure India is going with a good momentum for the rest of the series. Yeah, and before we wind up for the second episode, I just have an interesting talk by Sunil Gavaskar in the commentary. I just want to know your opinion. So basically, when a bowler, if he takes wickets in the last 2 balls of the innings, let us say, and if he take wicket in the subsequent innings first ball, it will be considered as hat-trick, right?
Correct.
So
Good question.
why it is not the same for batsmen? Let us say a batsman who is not out at 48 in the first inning and he comes to bat in the second innings, and why the score is not being continued. So that's the question from Sunil Gavaskar. What do you guys think about
I
it?
think one can definitely argue, but I'm not sure if really ICC will take this.
No, but the thing is that hat trick or something like that. It's just it's an academic point. If it doesn't get shown in as a part of someone's performance in that particular innings, I feel it is a matter of innings, right? So even if someone has taken a hat trick or something like that, I don't think it will. Anyway, it doesn't show in this thing. But for a batsman,
I think we also have to look at the very definition of what hat trick is in cricket books. Only then we will be able to.
Yeah, because I'm sure if the batsman is hitting for a last ball of an innings for a 4 or something, and then he starts off the next innings by hitting a couple of 4s, I'm sure why not? We could just call it a hat trick of 4s, but it wouldn't have any difference.
Correct.
I don't think it is saying the same thing like if someone has picked up 3 wickets in an innings and 7 in the second innings, he wouldn't be given 10 for the one innings, right? It would still be 10 for the match, but it would still have been done in 2 separate innings. I don't see it as anything other than something as a conversational point. It's interesting, but
Yeah, of course, it's definitely a conversational point. I'm sure even Gavaskar was meant to make some conversation there when he was doing commentary.
So before we move on, we wanted to introduce a new segment to our podcast, which would be the hero of the week. Again, it's very self-explanatory. Whoever player has done the best previous week or so, we would be giving them a shout out. And for this week, from my end at least, it would be Joe Root. What do you guys say?
He made our job easy, I would say. Nothing can beat a scoring double century in a test match, right? So yeah, Joe Root is our first hero of the week.
For me, it's undoubtedly Root. Just for his double century coming into India, it's never going to be easy against the Indian spinners. The way he tackled the spinners, it's just amazing.
Yeah, Joe Root, if you are listening to this, please DM your details to us. We'll send trophy to you.
I hope not. But and also he's been stellar form coming off a double century and almost double century in Sri Lanka, and especially I followed the first test a bit in Sri Lanka. And just the fact that he scored a double century, and in the same match there was Lasith Ebuldanya from Sri Lanka, a left arm spinner who picked 10 wickets. Can you imagine? I don't know if there is too many instances of someone being so dominant, a bowler being so dominant, and on the other side, a batsman just like not being bothered by it at all and going on to score a double century. And it's just the fact that he's coming with a weight of runs, and we were all thinking about if he would be as destructive or even as good when it comes to India and India's spinners. But he was just as good, and even I think he played one of the all-time great innings in Chennai.
Yeah, definitely. Raja, I have seen him scoring, double hundred and a 180. He was, we should say, unlucky to miss out another double century in Sri Lanka. Having such big scores in subcontinent, I don't remember at least such a dominant player. Yeah, I remember Steve Smith scoring centuries, but yeah, scoring back-to-back double centuries is like another level of achievement.
So, Churut, Hero of the Week from all of us.
That's all for the week, guys. Thank you for listening. Please do follow us on Facebook, and please do follow us on Twitter @GCBW Podcast. Bye bye.